Most musicians I know are working 3 jobs. Roughly a third of your income will come from gigs, another third from teaching, and another third probably from a non-music related job just to pay the bills. And if you add all that up, on a good month, you're maybe looking at about $3,000. There is a way to use your experience as a musician that pays much better than that. I made about $250,000 doing it, and I didn't have a big following or a fancy website, just the experience I'd already built as a working musician. In this video, I'm going to show you what it is, why it pays so much better than anything you're probably doing right now, and how to get started with nothing but the skills that you already have. If you're a working musician, you've probably got a few different things going on to make ends meet. There's of course gigs, right? Functions and weddings and corporate stuff, they pay reasonably well, but they can be pretty physically tiring. They're obviously locked into Friday and Saturday nights, and they're not always the most musically fulfilling way to spend your weekend. And it's obviously seasonal, so it's limited to the warmer months. So to fill in the gaps, a lot of musicians teach, either privately, which gives you a bit more control, but the income can be a little bit inconsistent, or in schools where the money is a little bit steadier, but you don't really have control over who you teach, so you're often stuck teaching kids who genuinely don't want to be there. Also, you've probably got to work in a few different schools for it to be enough. I did both. I did private students, cash in hand, small money. I also did school teaching, high school, primary school, and a lot of the time it just felt like running out the clock because neither of us wanted to be there. I also taught at university as well, which was obviously better. There's more money, more committed students, but still the same fundamental problem across all of it. And maybe on top of that, you've got something else going on entirely, whether that's pouring drinks at a bar, working in a cafe, or even a 9 to 5, whatever it takes to cover the gaps. The problem is every single income stream has the same ceiling, which is your time, and there are only so many hours in the day. But there's one approach that gives you a bit more financial stability without adding more hours. That approach is coaching. Now, it's not a new concept for sure, but musicians doing it, specifically online, is still relatively new. Think of it like a modern approach to teaching. Teaching, in the traditional sense, is what I just described, right? You do a lesson, usually for an hour, you charge by the hour, you show up, you deliver, you get paid. The student may or may not practice. They may or may not come back next week. You have very little control over any of it. Coaching is a different relationship entirely. You're working with someone usually over a fixed period of time towards a specific outcome that they actually care about. They're more committed. Usually they pay properly up front, and they show up differently because they've got some skin in the game. And here's the thing I'll say honestly, I used to hate teaching. I hated it. I always viewed it as something I had to do as a musician to survive. It was some obligation. I could, of course, see the value in music education. I genuinely wanted to help people, but that feeling wasn't always being reciprocated, and you can only pour so much into something before it starts to drain you. But when I switched to coaching, 2 things happened at exactly the same time. First, I started making significantly more money, but I also actually really started enjoying it because the people I was working with, they wanted to be there. They were committed. They were engaged. They were making progress. It stopped feeling like a grind and started feeling like the reason that I got into music in the first place. And you don't need anything you don't already have to do exactly the same thing. Here's what most musicians don't realize. You don't need a big following. You don't need a website. You don't even need some kind of official qualification or course in how to teach. Most musicians have taught at some point, which means you already know roughly how to produce a result for someone, how to help them. And honestly, if you're confident enough in your playing that you'd post a video of yourself online to attract students, you're already in a really good position to do this. Plus, the delivery side is the easy part. You've already done it. You've already taught, right? The numbers just look completely different. Instead of charging 50 or 80 bucks for a lesson, you're charging $1,000 for a program, maybe more. And that probably feels a bit uncomfortable to hear, but there are people out there who will pay it. Trust me, I had hundreds of them. It's not about being the most famous musician or having the biggest platform. It's only about knowing how to find the right person and offer them something they actually want. When that clicks, it takes an enormous amount of financial pressure off your life. You then have fewer students, you have less hours teaching, and the ones that you do have are the ones you actually enjoy working with. And when it works, here's what actually changes. Before that though, if you want to get started with this, I've put together a free training called the Musicians Coaching Blueprint inside my community, which will map this onto your exact situation. You'll find the link for that down below. Go and check it out. So let me tell you what actually changes when this works. It's not just the money, although the money matters, obviously. When I had stable income coming in from coaching, the gigs I was playing started to change because I wasn't saying yes to everything out of desperation anymore. I could afford to be more selective. I started spending my time on creative projects with people I actually wanted to play with, making music I actually cared about. And not because I'd somehow gotten lucky, but because I'd taken the financial pressure off myself enough to have a choice. It freed up energy I didn't even know that I was spending. And when you're constantly scrambling, chasing the next gig, following up on invoices or students who canceled, and constantly doing that mental arithmetic of whether or not this month is going to be okay, that takes up a lot of headspace and give you a lot of anxiety. I know it did with me. Even when you're not thinking about it, it's always there. And when that went away, I could actually think about being more strategic with my music career instead of just surviving. I had a studio space in London. I was investing in myself as a musician. I could put myself in positions to capitalize on opportunities when they came up. And ultimately, that's what led me to landing a gig on a theatre show in London's West End. That's what financial stability actually buys you. It's not just security, but options. And you might be thinking, okay, well, this sounds great, but who's actually going to pay me that kind of money? Who's going to pay me $1,000 for music lessons? I thought exactly the same thing. I remember when I first started putting this together thinking, okay, maybe I'm a decent teacher, but $1,000, right? For me, that feels insane. Here's what I didn't understand at the time. People aren't paying $1,000 for music lessons. That's not what they're buying. All of my students were intermediate drummers who could play, but they couldn't necessarily improvise as well as they wanted. So they'd sit down and they kind of hear something in their head and have no idea how to get that out on the kit. And that frustration had been eating at them for years. That's what they were paying to fix. When you understand that, when you stop selling the time with that hourly rate and start offering a real outcome to someone who wants it, the price actually seems much more reasonable. To the right person, it's an obvious yes. The other thing I'll say is the reason most musicians can't get someone to pay that isn't because the money isn't there. It's because they don't know how to find the right person or how to talk about what they do in a way that connects. When you know how to do that and it's not complicated, the right students don't need convincing. They just need to find you. There's a very specific reason why some musicians can charge $2,000 for a coaching program and others can't get anyone to pay them even $200. And it comes down to one thing. I'll show you exactly what that is in this video. Go and check it out.